Here's a question every American ought to be asking. If Congress demands transparency from everyone else, why does it keep resisting transparency for itself? Now, this week, the U.S. House voted to sidestep an effort that would have forced the public release of House Ethics Committee records involving alleged sexual harassment by House members. Instead of moving the transparency measure forward, the House voted to refer it to the Ethics Committee, a move that, by all accounts, gives it very little chance of advancing at all. The official House clerk record shows the motion passed on March 4th, 2026, and a roll call reported that the effort was aimed at publicly releasing documents tied to sexual harassment allegations investigated by the House Ethics Committee. Now, let's be fair. The stated argument against releasing the files was that public disclosure could chill victim cooperation, or worse, perhaps re-traumatize victims, or even discourage witnesses from coming forward. Ethics Committee leaders specifically warned that making investigative materials public could expose sensitive testimony and create fear of retaliation. Now, that is a real concern, and we don't want to casually dismiss that. Victims deserve dignity, they deserve protection, they deserve security and care. But here's the problem. Protecting victims is not the same thing as protecting the institution. And too often in Washington, these two things get blended together until the institution wins and the public loses. Because Americans have heard this song before. We were told reforms were coming after the 2017 Capitol Hill harassment scandals. Back then, the Associated Press reported that more than $17 million in taxpayer money had been paid out from 1997 to 2017, over a 20-year period, to resolve workplace claims in the legislative branch, including harassment, discrimination, among other violations. And bipartisan reformers said the system was broken, lacking accountability and lacking transparency. In 2018, senators from both parties pushed reforms specifically to increase transparency and require public reporting of awards and settlements, all the while holding members personally liable in certain cases. So after all that, what does it say when years later the House still recoils from fuller disclosure? It says the instinct for self-protection is alive and well. And don't mistake the fact that any money the government uses to make these payoffs, it's really our money, because the only way the government makes money is through taxation. Special interest group donations and payola notwithstanding, all right? But, I mean, look, it's a sweet deal. You get elected, and if you become important enough to keep afloat, well, you're apparently granted a blanket immunity for your behavior, where the worst thing that might happen to you is you've got to survive a bad headline cycle. You know full well that if you or I were guilty of these kinds of behaviors, we would be fined and fired at the very least. Our lives in the immediate would be ruined. But for DC, see, they keep their jobs and you pay the fine for them. Transparency matters because when Congress refuses to prosecute or to hold each other accountable, as they are wont to do, I mean, if we at least knew who these perverts were, we could, vote them out of office, perhaps. But when their names and deeds are kept in the dark, we're prevented from making a full judgment. If I didn't know better, it's almost like DC doesn't want you to have that information because it might influence your vote, and they like your vote right where it is. But I digress. Now that leads us to the deeper issue. Are we already living in a two-tiered justice system? Maybe not in the formal sense that the law is written differently for members of Congress, but what about in practice? What about in culture? What about enforcement or in consequences? That's the question. Because ordinary Americans know what it feels like to live under one standard while elites seem to operate under an entirely different one. The average worker doesn't get to hide behind procedure or delay or committee referral or institutional opacity. The average worker doesn't get a built-in machine designed to absorb political scandal until public outrage cools off. See, this is why trust is dying in America, not because of open lawlessness, although that's a part of it now, a growing part, but selective accountability. And history warns us that societies do not stay stable for long when people conclude that justice belongs to insiders. You don't have to go any further than Encyclopedia Britannica to find examples. How about pre-revolutionary France? One of the core causes of the French Revolution was that the poor carried the burden while the privileged classes had long enjoyed exemptions. When rulers tried to squeeze ordinary people while the elite stayed insulated, revolution became all but inevitable. Or how about the Soviet system? Soviet law was bent by party control, with legal outcomes shaped by what it calls, quote, telephone law. And that's where party officials dictated judicial decisions. It also notes that secret laws provided lavish benefits for the ruling elite. This is what a two-tier system looks like when it matures. One law for the connected, another reality for everyone else. How about this example? How about Venezuela under Chavez? The weakening of transparency and concentration of institutional control helped create a system in which the government could act with impunity while opponents had little real recourse. These are all different countries, different ideologies, the same warning. When elites stop submitting to scrutiny, they stop deserving our trust. And when justice becomes negotiable for the powerful, it becomes unreachable for the weak. And scripture isn't silent here either. Luke 8:17 says, "For nothing is hidden that will not be made manifest, nor is anything secret that will not be known and come to light." Proverbs 21:15 says, "When justice is done, it is a joy to the righteous, but a terror to the evildoers." And of course, again, I'm a broken record, but Micah 6:8 reminds us that the Lord requires us to do justice, to love kindness, and walk humbly with your God. Notice that scripture does not tell leaders to protect their image. It tells them to do justice, to seek justice, not spin, not bury, not refer it into oblivion, but justice. And if Congress wants to restore confidence, here's a radical idea. Stop demanding from the country what you refuse to practice yourselves. Be transparent. Protect victims, absolutely. Redact what must be redacted, okay? But don't turn confidentiality into a sanctuary for holding on to your power. Because a nation cannot preach equality before the law while tolerating islands of elite immunity. A republic doesn't collapse the first time its leaders sin. A republic begins to collapse when leaders can sin and then they conceal and they congratulate themselves for handling it internally. Yes, we got that internal investigation. It's all squared away. We're good. And the question before us is not simply whether Congress made the right procedural move this week. The real question is this: do we still have one standard of justice in America? Or are we becoming a country where the powerful are investigated, but only the ordinary are exposed? Because when truth is hidden to preserve power, justice is no longer blind, it's managed. And once justice is managed, freedom is living on borrowed time. Once again, I want to remind you, you can watch new episodes of Culture Crossroads every Sunday evening, 5 p.m. Central Time on BeckTV.plus. That is BEKTV.plus. And of course, we really appreciate you checking us out here on our YouTube channel. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. Even leave a comment, whether you love it, whether you hate it. It's all right. That helps the algorithm know that this is content that people at least enjoy on one level or another. And so we appreciate that. We appreciate all of you for checking us out, for staying with us. The channel is growing. Keep it up. And thanks for watching.